The 80s had the General. The 90s had John Gilligan. In the noughties, it was the reign of Martin Marlowe Hyland. His was a familiar path with success and power, and then the recklessness. He had to go, because with him, an innocent young man doing an honest day's work died. Crime World presents Caught in the Crossfire, the unsolved murders of Coke kingpin Marlowe Hyland and innocent Anthony Campbell. Available now on all podcast platforms.
So I suppose we'll start at the very beginning, and I want to know, how did you come to join the FBI? Because you originally had a degree in literature, right?
True, yeah. So I wanted to be an FBI agent since I was 11 years old. And the story with that, I think, is really geared around where I lived at the time, which was I was in the greater New York news market. And at the time I was a kid, the FBI was busting the mob, the mafia, and they were on the news all the time. And I thought, who are these good guys fighting the bad guys with suits and ties and brain power? I kind of like that. And then I was raised in a family that was very much a family that had a foundation of values, but also very much taught that there was good in this world and there was evil in the world. And you wanted to be sure you were on the side of good, justice, and fairness. So that caused me at age 11 to write a letter to the head of the FBI in Connecticut. Wow. The head of the field office there. And he wrote me back.
Wow.
And he said, hey, kid, stay with good grades. Here's what you need to do and, get back to me in 15 years.
Wow.
Well, one of the ways to get into the FBI back then, and still now, was to go to law school. So I did get an English literature degree. That, and of course, my parents were like, what are you going to do with an English lit degree? I since have written 2 books, but they aren't alive to have seen that happen. They would have enjoyed that. But I did go to law school.
Yeah.
And in law school, I figured I'm either going to become a prosecutor, again, with the bad guys and the side of justice.
And your suit.
Yeah, that's right, the suit and tie. Or I'm going to go to the law enforcement side. And of course, there's no better, really, in federal law enforcement than the FBI. And it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty well.
Yeah, it is.
So you worked in, I suppose, we'll come on to the book in a little bit, which is, I think, a very different, maybe not a step away, but a step to the side from counterintelligence, which is what you did. What is a counterintelligence division? Because we don't have anything like that in Ireland that we know of.
That you know of. Yes, that's right. That's probably a good thing. So look, the easy way of describing counterintelligence is that we catch spies.
Yeah.
We catch spies. And that means we work espionage cases. And the job, of course, is what we call the 3 Ds: detect, deter, and defeat foreign intelligence services who are working against U.S. interests. That means they're working here in the United States. And they do. This isn't the stuff of just movies and James Bond. The United States is loaded with foreign intelligence officers. Some declared, like they're attached to a consulate or an embassy, and it says on their business card, military intelligence officer or what have you. But many, many more undeclared, either working under the cover of diplomatic cover, like, oh, I'm the first cultural attaché at the consulate, but we know different. Some of them not attached to a diplomatic building at all, but penetrating our economy, our society. Those are harder to ferret out. But the FBI is, in addition, wears 2 hats, right? The FBI is both a criminal law enforcement agency, and it's a national security agency that catches spies and terrorists. 2 different sides of the FBI, often working together. I worked counterintelligence early in my career, then became a supervisor and rose up through the leadership ranks to a very senior level, led field offices and squads, but ended my career as the head of counterintelligence for the entire FBI, which I thought was really a dream come true for someone who started their career in counterintel to end it that way. And that meant I was in charge of all espionage investigations across the United States government.
That's like an incredibly thrilling job by the sounds of it, like a very exciting, I'm sure people and myself are like, I'm extremely curious about what a day in the life of that job would be like for you. What sort of would your typical things be that you would do?
If you're a counterintelligence agent in the FBI, obviously at a senior level, running things, you're a headquarters bureaucrat running programs across the world. If you're assigned on the street to counterintel, you are literally trying to ferret out the spies. Often surveillance is involved, often electronic surveillance and intercepts, which is where you get some pretty good lead information, but also physical surveillance of suspected spies. And the FBI has special teams of people who watch suspected spies because they're highly trained, these FBI teams, to see something that you or I might not see happen, like a brush pass, a dead drop, a signal mark of chalk on a telephone pole that says, I'm filling the drop, or don't come out today. All of that might elude most of us, but the highly trained surveillance experts know what they're looking at. And then, of course, the ultimate in the counterintel game is to recruit a foreign spy to work for the West, to work for Team America and our allies. That is the ultimate. Some people say, oh, Frank, isn't the ultimate to arrest and handcuff a spy? I look at it differently. I say that's a failure. If it comes down to arresting a spy and trying them in court, you've actually failed, because the ultimate goal is to recruit them in place. We call that an RIP, a recruitment in place. And they could work for years at their job in the Kremlin in Moscow or in Beijing and report back to you on what's going on. That's the ultimate goal.
That's fascinating. Like, that is something, again, to me, that's like a Hollywood film sort of thing. You don't realize that this is an actual job that people do. When you started doing the job, were you kind of giddy with excitement, or was it kind of what was it like?
I was young and excited.
Yeah.
They could have put me in any work the FBI does. And let me tell you, the FBI, has priorities. Counterterrorism, preventing the next act of terrorism, is the number one priority. But the number two priority is counterintelligence, catching spies, protecting America's secrets.
Right.
And protecting America's secrets, used to be entirely military. That's what we were defending. But I'm here to tell you, today's secrets are not just military secrets that other countries want. Other countries want our trade secrets, intellectual property, the latest widget that some American company is doing differently than anybody else. It's an economic situation right now as well. So I was thrilled to be assigned very early to counterintel. It is a thinking man's and woman's game. It's like a chess game, but a chess game with deadly consequences if they get the secrets that end up hurting us in a war, killing someone, catching a source of yours and killing that source. It's a deadly chess game. So I was thrilled to do it early in my career. People need to understand, wait a minute, you were assigned to a field office. My first office was Atlanta, Georgia. Are you telling me the FBI has a squad of agents in Atlanta, Georgia working counterintelligence? Yes, they do. And in fact, I'm here to tell you, every one of the 56 field offices in America has at least one counterintelligence squad, because our secrets are everywhere.
Yeah. And it's a big tease that I'm a journalist sitting here with you, and I don't get to I can't ask you all the questions I would love to ask.
Some of which I couldn't answer, probably.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And I can feel myself, if I was listening to this, screaming, ask him X, ask him Y. But let's talk a little bit about, I suppose, you're talking about counterintelligence with terrorism. And I suppose one thing that we speak a lot about on our podcast, on Crime World, Nicola would talk about, is drugs and drug trafficking and narcotics. And at the moment, 3 of Ireland's finest, and I put that in air quotes, drug lords are wanted by the FBI, $5 million for any information on them, the Kinahan family. When it comes to counterintelligence and narcotics, how does that work?
Well, that's interesting. Our focus, of course, is on foreign intelligence officers, foreign government, state-sponsored spying. But of course, we get into individual spying. Americans volunteer to spy for adversaries at an alarming rate. largely because they're greedy, but also because of their ego. But when you're talking about mixing counterintel, counterterrorism, and drugs on a global level, there are connections. So, for example, oftentimes foreign intelligence services will get into the drug business or look the other way in exchange for something of value. So let's say, for example, that Iran needs weapons. Mm-hmm. And there's a drug cartel somewhere in South America that has their hands on a lot of weapons. And so maybe that drug cartel will exchange their weapons for some opium that comes from Afghanistan that Iran could help with. Examples of a kind of a bartering system that can go on. And also there are freelance people. Smugglers, for example, are often human smugglers, which is a huge problem in the United States on the southern border.
Yeah.
They will take all comers, and if you pay the money, they'll do anything. So if they can smuggle people, they can smuggle drugs. And very often those smugglers do work. There's a huge smuggling, organized crime facet to human smuggling, where the drug cartels are behind that smuggling operation. Because smuggling people and drugs, pretty much the same thing, big money in both.
Yeah.
They don't care if they get caught once in a while, who cares? These people are expendable. So it's there, and you're telling me about these, the FBI is looking for these Irish drug cartel members. When you talk about a $5 million reward, that's virtually unheard of. So that means these are major, major players if that kind of money is being offered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, they're in Dubai at the moment. Gardaí in Ireland have been in Dubai. There's kind of this PR campaign going on. Don't know if we'll ever be handed them back. Don't know if the US will ever be handed them over. I mean, the time is ticking down on them. But it is something that we are watching with keen interest.
Yeah. This is often solved on a diplomatic level.
Yeah.
Particularly with a Middle Eastern country, and might be something involving an exchange. You give me these folks, we give you this. Those are tough decisions made at the State Department.
Yeah.
And the White House.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it's something that Ireland would have anything to offer, in exchange for these. I mean, there's a...
But if we're talking about the U.S. prosecuting,
yes, yeah,
we probably have something to offer, particularly to the UAE, Dubai.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no...
there's no extradition?
Extradition treaty in place.
I know. That's probably why they're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So your new book, like I said, it's not really a step away from what you're doing. I'd say it's more of a shuffle to the side because it's all about the highway serial killers. Yeah. What is the Highway Serial Killings Initiative? Because this is something I've never heard of. And like you said, many of the attendees here at CrimeCon who are avid crime followers may have never heard of it either.
Well, I'll go a step further. I spent 25 years as an FBI special agent, and my work never really caused me to look at the Highway Serial Killings Initiative. So I found out about this when I bumped into a woman who said, I work for the FBI, and I was retired. I've been retired. And I said, what do you do at the Bureau? And she said, I'm the head of the Highway Serial Killings Initiative. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she proceeded to give me some startling numbers. Here's some numbers. 850 murders of women along American highways in just the last few decades. And that number is just what the FBI knows of, not what they don't know. Mm-hmm. Those women victims tend to be at like a 98% level sex trafficking victims. More startling, the FBI says with high confidence that these murders are largely committed by long-haul truckers. 200 of those 850 cases are considered unsolved and pending. Mm-hmm. And the FBI says they're working 450 suspects right now. That means the potential of over 400 homicidal maniacs that are out there on our nation's highways. We know that long-haul trucker is the #1 profession of serial killers. #1.
Wow.
Not teachers, not accountants, long-haul truckers.
Right. And
the reality is that there are already 25 25 long-haul truckers currently in prison for multiple homicides, and still these cases go on, killing continues, and the historic cases are still not all solved, even though 25 truckers are actually serving time. So this book is about that highway serial killings initiative. The FBI first publicly acknowledged the initiative in 2009, only in 2009, because they had to, because the cases were so out of control that they needed the public's help. Where did it all start? It started in the heartland of America in Oklahoma, where a female crime analyst for a state police agency, this is a long time ago now, we're talking late 90s, early 2000s, she realizes that there are young ladies from Oklahoma who are turning up dead across the United States. She further realizes that many of those women are sex trafficked. And she further theorizes that they're all found in close proximity to truck stops and that truckers are probably the primary suspects. Now, she starts really alerting her leadership in that Oklahoma State agency.
Yeah.
Now, 40 years ago or so, a female crime analyst who's making a big noise about something might not have gotten the attention they'd get today. That's just reality.
Yeah.
They might get asked to go get some more coffee for the detectives.
Yeah.
But she doesn't do that. This woman is Terry Turner. She's a hero in my book. She says, look, I'm telling you, we have 5, 6, 7, 8, then 9, then 10 murders of girls from Oklahoma in a span of a few months, and we've got to do something about it. So they say, okay. Terry, go ahead and do your suggestion of putting out a teletype to detectives around the country if they have similar cases, female, possibly sex trafficked, maybe a trucker did it, found last seen near a truck stop or the highway, dumped near a highway. Go ahead and put that out, have your meeting, buy some coffee and donuts. She thinks maybe she'll get 6 or 10 detectives to show up. She gets dozens of detectives showing up who say, I have similar cases.
Wow.
Yeah. She then demands that the FBI show up. She's been pestering the local FBI office. And they've been kind of blowing her off, quite honestly. They don't believe this.
Yeah.
They come to the meeting, they hear all these cases, and they say, okay, you have checked the box for serial killings. We're in.
Yeah.
We're in. And that's when they start the FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative.
So, like you said, truck drivers, number one profession for serial killers. Is it a case that the job attracts a predator thinking, I know how I'm going to do what I want to do? Yeah. Or is it like this perfect storm of being on the road, long unsociable hours, and that is what makes somebody think, maybe I will do this? Or is it a mix of both?
This is the age-old nature versus nurture question,
yes.
Which I absolutely ask in my book. I ask a lot of questions in my book because I'm an investigator.
Right, yeah.
And I put on my investigator hat. I also put on a hard hat and rode 2,000 miles in a big rig to figure out this subculture. I know does that make me an expert on long-haul trucking? No. But I wanted to get a feel for this, and then I dug into the research. So I asked everybody I could about this. Question. What makes a serial killer? Do they choose long-haul driving because they are exploiting the jurisdiction? So, they're taking a body in one police jurisdiction. They kill or rape the victim in a second police jurisdiction. Remember, we have a moving crime scene with this truck.
Yeah.
And then they dump the body in a third police jurisdiction. That really wreaks havoc with the police issues of whose case is this?
Right.
Do we care? Does this very rural county sheriff's office even have detectives, let alone homicide detectives, let alone intelligence analysts? No, probably not. Do they know about the FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative? Can they fill out the 200-question survey about their crime scene and get it entered so the FBI can help? No. So do truckers know that? Yeah, I think they do. Who gets attracted to long-haul trucking? Look, there's no question that a job won't make you a serial killer. But for sure, it can help foster, facilitate, your mindset and your anger and resentment. But I do believe that there are a certain group of truckers that are attracted to the job because they are loners, antisocial, aren't looking for human engagement. In fact, kind of hate human engagement. And we know that there are different kinds of trucking. So I get into this question.
Okay.
There's different kinds of trucking. They shouldn't be all lumped together. There's the dry vanner, which is the guy or gal who's hauling dry goods, box of paper towels across the United States. I rode flatbed, which means high engagement with the load. We are loaded up to 80,000 pounds when we're full. And it's a flatbed trailer. So one day we're carrying drywall that's from a gypsum factory. The next day we're carrying aluminum rods to make ammunition. The next day we're carrying a steel coil called a suicide coil that has to be chained down precisely. You have to know math and physics and weight distribution and points of securement. Can I fill up my gas tanks today, or will that put me overweight? Do I have too much weight over one axle? That is very different than a dry vanner who has no mental or physical engagement with the load.
Okay.
Right? And then there's everything in between. You've got low boy trucks, which you may have seen because they have very tall loads, so the trailer rides right off the ground. You have highly paid hazmat tank drivers. You have reefer trucks, which are refrigerated trucks that carry produce, vegetables, and fruit. Those, believe it or not, those drivers are engaged with their load. They are climate control for their load. They know the humidity and the temperature and the moisture. So you can't lump everybody together. But what I theorize in the book is, if you want to narrow down 450 suspects to a manageable level, you're probably not looking at a flatbedder as much as you're a dry vanner.
This is what I was going to ask you. When it comes down to that and kind of profiling, I suppose you have these kind of original criminal profiling where it's unorganized and organized. One is high intelligence, one is low intelligence. Well, not low intelligence, but if you had a body and, you're figuring, right, this is a high intelligence person. Are you looking at that as a flat loader? Is that how that works? You're able to kind of break it down, yeah?
You can look at the crime scene, the victimology, which is the study of how the victim was selected and left. And you can tell a lot about the killer. Yeah. How smart they are. The knot they use to gag or strangle a woman, is that a Navy knot? Is there some intricacy to that knot? Are they making an effort to hide their identity, but also have they stolen the ID off the victim so it's going to take longer to figure out? Some of these cases are 30 years before they figure out who the victim was. Yeah. Because there's no ID. So yes, you can kind of tell that. And I do theorize that we're probably dealing more with dry vanners. I also think we're probably dealing more with owner-operators of trucks as opposed to big-time corporate drivers who drive for some of the big names in the United States, J.B. Hunt, Werner, big names you see emblazoned on trailers, right, on the highway. Why? Those big corporate drivers are highly monitored. Trucking is high-tech today. Your GPS, your navigation system is tracked. The company knows your speed, your location. It's hard to commit crimes. But just as I theorize that, I find cases that involve corporate truckers who park their rig for their mandatory federal downtime, 36 hours of downtime every week, usually weekend. Mm-hmm. They park the rig at the truck stop. They get an Uber. They rent a car. They go off and do their killing. Right. So you can't just say, it can't be a corporate driver. They're tracked. Yeah. They're not tracked on their downtime. They're not tracked when they get out of that rig. So it's tough. I ask a similar question of victims. Which kind of trafficking victim is more likely to be killed? And I find out there are 3 kinds of work styles for trafficked women. There's pimp-controlled. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are tightly controlled and monitored, not only by the pimp, by his bottom, his deputy pimp, the girl who kind of supervises the rest of the stable. This is a language I describe in the book. They have their own vernacular. Okay. Right? So are they more likely to get killed because they're so closely monitored? Or is it the second work style? So you have pimp-controlled, you have renegade, which is a woman doing this on her own or with a friend, no pimp. Then you have outlaw, which is there's no sex going to happen at all. This is a crime waiting to happen. They're going to rip off the victim. They are the criminal, and they're going to rip the trucker off. He's going to lose some cash at least.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is more likely to get hurt? Now, you might say, well, that outlaw sounds like it's dangerous. You're ripping the cash off of a trucker. He's going to hurt you. No, they don't get hurt that much. You know why? There's embarrassment. The trucker's not calling the police and saying, I think a prostitute just ripped me off.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You say, well, the pimp control, they're tightly monitored. They're probably not getting hurt. Nope, they get killed almost in equal numbers as renegades get killed. So it's tough, but I theorize throughout the book to try to get this narrowed down. And just like there's commonalities in serial killer truckers, what are those commonalities? We talked about their backgrounds, their antisocial proclivities. There's a lot of drug addiction and alcohol abuse amongst serial killer truckers. Mm-hmm. There's a lot amongst truckers generally.
Yeah.
They have to stay awake. They self-medicate. They're bored often. They take a lot of caffeine or something to stay up, and then they have to take something to come down at night. They must get their sleep. They must have reason to take something to get to sleep. What else about serial killers is common? There's two kinds of serial killers, just like there's three kinds of trafficking victims. Two kinds of truckers, serial killer truckers. The kind that like to control the outcome. This killing is about power and control. What does that mean? It means they want to prolong the torture, the sex abuse, the rape as long as possible. They like that control. And then and only then when they're done with that, it could be weeks or months in some cases, they will then kill. Mm. There's another kind of serial killer, and that person's all about the killing, the power of life and death. And they kill quickly. And very often, there's no sex involved at all. They may get aroused or get off on the killing, but this is not about sex for them. This is about killing. And they often have deep resentment about their childhood, their mother. That it seems like they're projecting their anger about their mom or absent mom onto the woman. Mm-hmm. These are scary, scary people, both of those categories.
And you obviously went on a ride along with a trucker for across 2,000 miles.
Over 2,000 miles.
What was that like? Like what was that like for you to have gone from, like, it's obviously research, but also I can imagine the lifestyle was just probably a bit of a culture shock?
Well, for me it was. Yeah. I mean, this is not a Ritz-Carlton hotel.
Right, yeah.
I slept in the upper berth of the back, in the bunk bed in the back. We ate a lot of our meals in that truck. We cooked some meals in the truck.
Oh, really?
The driver happens to be a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America.
Oh, wow.
And he worked as a chef until he decided being a chef was not for him. And by the way, he could make a lot more money in long-haul trucking. This is a six-figure income for some of the better truckers. So I was proud to be driving with someone who could cook. Yeah. And so we had an electric frying pan when we had, a hot plate. We got our groceries at Walmart, and we did some of that. We did a lot of DoorDash or Grubhub ordering to the truck. They come to the truck, wow. By the way, in the parking lot of a truck stop. They'll deliver.
Wow.
Yeah. And so as, kind of the little kid in me was like, this is pretty cool. I get to ride high above the traffic. Yeah. There's all these bells and whistles. And I like that for about a day.
I'd say so. I'd say the novelty wore off.
Yeah. And then you're like, I need a shower and a hot meal, And I'm kind of tired of relieving myself in a gallon jug in the truck because you don't want to stop for the bathroom. And this guy had he must have had a cast iron bladder because he could go forever.
Right.
Go forever. The other kind of thing is I like my coffee in the morning. And he didn't like coffee. So we weren't stopping for coffee until I insisted we were. And some of the showers I insisted on too.
Okay, yeah.
One of the most eerie things that happened on my journey, and a lot of strange things happened, was we end up, at the end of my week riding, I have to go home. And I didn't know where I would end my trip. You don't know. That's pretty cool. You don't know on a day-to-day basis where you're headed. The dispatcher calls you and says, today you're picking up lumber in Wisconsin and you're bringing it to Ohio. You don't know that until that dispatch calls.
Okay.
So I didn't know where I would end my trip. I didn't know where we'd be every day. We were up in lumber country, way up north near Canada, in Wisconsin. We've been Ohio, Indiana. We were everywhere. But I go, okay, it's the end of the week. Next big city with an airport, I got to get off. I got to get off and I'll book a flight.
Yeah.
So he goes, okay, next big city coming up is Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So right here.
Yeah. And he lets me off at a TA truck stop. It's a big truck stop company. Right in Nashville, right off the highway. And I get a shower in at the truck stop. And I'm in the shower. And I start thinking about where I am. And I realize I am in the truck stop where 2 women were killed and dumped by a notorious trucker killer named Bruce Mendenhall. I could not believe, and I got out of the shower, I got on my phone and on the internet, and I'm like, God darn it, I'm right here where they were killed. Ironically, it's also where Bruce Mendenhall was arrested by a Nashville police detective who had been surveilling him. And the cop walks up to Bruce Mendenhall in the rig. He looks at Bruce and he goes, are you the guy we're looking for? And Bruce Mendenhall shrugs his shoulders and says, if you say so.
Okay.
When they looked in his truck cab, it was a torture chamber. There was a rifle, duct tape, handcuffs, sex toys, latex gloves, and a bag of bloody clothing containing the DNA of 5 women.
Wow.
That's right here where we have CrimeCon going on, right here in Nashville. And I have story after story of that in the book. The most heinous killers and killings that I've ever heard of, the evil and torture. There's a case of one of the notorious truckers, Robert Ben Rhodes. One of his victims was 14-year-old Regina Waters. She was hitchhiking with her boyfriend outside of Houston, Texas. He picked them up, 14 years old. He quickly kills the boyfriend. The boyfriend's a speed bump in the way. He then proceeds on a cross-country trip with Regina, where he rapes and tortures her for weeks in the truck cab. He hangs her from fish hooks from the roof of his cab. She's finally dumped and killed in an abandoned farmhouse in Illinois. And I have to tell you, even though I've seen some heinous crime scenes in my FBI career, mostly blood, guts, decomposing bodies, this last image, the last photo ever taken of Regina alive, is one of the most ghastly things I've ever seen. She's fully clothed. So that's not the problem. There's no blood or guts. But it's the context, not the content. The context is she knows she's about to get raped or killed again. She's going to get, something bad's about to happen again. She has her hands outstretched in front of her like she's pleading. The look on her face is like, please God, not again. And she's dressed in a black dress that Robert Ben Rhodes made her put on for him, and high heel shoes that he made her put on. And her hair has been cut extremely short. That's all him. Even as he kidnapped her, he called her father anonymously and said, I've made some changes. I cut her hair. And that photo, of course, confirmed that. The FBI agent assigned to this case said that that scene with her decomposing body eventually found was extremely significant forensically. Because he was looking for signatures. You know, we're all looking for the signature of a specific killer. That knot, that method of tearing the clothing, whatever, that links the crimes. This signature that the FBI found was that Regina's pubic hair had been shaved prior to death. And that was a link to all the other killings by Robert Ben Rhodes. How many other killings? As many as 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they were to match with that. They all had the same signature?
They almost all had the same signature. Robert Ben Rhodes was finally captured by an Arizona state trooper who saw a big rig with its hazard lights flashing on the side of the highway. The trooper pulls up behind it. Trooper puts his trooper hat on, strolls up to the big rig, and hears a woman screaming. The woman is shackled in the back of the cab. She's naked, except for bedroom slippers. And that starts the downfall of Robert Bent Rhodes. That's when they realize this guy's good for a lot of murders.
Yeah. And I suppose him dressing her up, putting the dress and the shoes on, was he making her imitate somebody? Or was that just...
Yeah, the theory there is this has something to do with his mother.
Okay, that's where
I hate to keep blaming mom. We don't want to blame mom all the time, do we?
You know, I just spoke to Anne Burgess and she was talking about how mothers are always blamed, but she was like, you know, what they don't realise is that there was an absent father. Yes. And the mother was trying to be their mother and father.
Yes, I'm with Anne. I think the father plays into these far more than we realize.
Exactly, yeah, you know. But you spoke to, obviously, a long-haul trucker. You also spoke to some of the survivors of long-haul trucker serial killers. What is the most important thing that you learned from them that you were able to take into your research?
So first of all, I had to abandon my biases. We all may have in our heads certain ideas about who becomes a trafficking victim. Namely, it couldn't be anybody in my family. It couldn't be anybody in my network of friends or neighbors or relatives. Certainly not. It's somebody else. What's wrong? The women I talked to who survived being trafficked to truckers, one of them was a preacher's kid, daughter of a pastor. Another one was a Midwest American girl who went to college, had some law enforcement in her family. Very bright people. So you got to throw out your ideas about this.
Because them being vulnerable.
Yeah,
people.
well, that I want to educate people who say this, I don't need to read this book or worry about trafficking because my kid would never fall prey to this.
Right.
You're wrong. And here's what you need to look for, because there's commonalities in killers and there's commonalities in victims. The experts that I interviewed, and boy, did I interview some of the top experts in the country, they told me, look for these commonalities. And as I'm talking to these women, the checklist is, I'm checking off the boxes in my head. Oh my God, the experts are right. What are those things? Early childhood trauma, often in the form of unwanted touching or sexual abuse. Number one. Number two, there's kind of a tower of trauma that stacks up. It's not just divorce. It's not just domestic violence in the home, but it's suicide, early death of a parent or loved one. And then you've got this early exposure to drugs, often starting with marijuana. But they tell me, and I know this is controversial in the United States, but these women told me marijuana was their gateway drug to harder drugs. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's what they told me. And it went to OxyContin, a lot of Oxy 80s, which they would crush for a faster high easily. You can get Oxy easier on the street here than you can get heroin. And it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But they did use heroin and they used meth. And then the really bad decisions about boyfriends. Oh my God. A series of bad boyfriends, sometimes introduced. This is where, people say, well, it wouldn't happen to my kid or you're introduced by someone you know and trust to someone who's going to groom and eventually recruit you into trafficking. Today, that moves online. Today, the grooming and recruitment, boy, parents really need to pay attention to what their kids are doing online because it's happening and you won't even see it. Icons emojis are used instead of words. And that friend of a friend and your brother's older friend and your sister's buddy, cousin, uncle is on there and, hey, grooming, you're great. How about this gift? Come out with us. And eventually the grooming happens and the recruitment happens and the drugs cause the judgment to go out the window.
Yeah.
Out the window. Now you're just living for the drugs. And if you're already having sex anyway, these women have told me this, the rationalization was, I'm already having sex, I might as well make money for it. Right. I might as well get paid. And that's certainly the boyfriend or pimp telling you this.
Yeah.
And then this kind of pimp guy, this pimp figure who is now the sole source of your affection and the ego stroke you're getting, and often your source of drugs, and your loyalty is to him. This happens very rapidly. And getting out, I asked the experts who do some great work with rehab centers and homes and residential facilities for women coming out of trafficking. And I asked them, what's the magic? What's the answer? What buttons do you press to get a woman out of the trafficking trap? And they look at me and they go, there's no magic here at all. We don't do very much at all. You know what we do? We wait for them to be ready.
Yeah.
We tell them we're here. We give them the business card. Call us when you're ready to get out and escape. That's how it works best. And I talked to 2 women who now are out and are running resource centers for women like them. Yeah.
That's incredible.
They're doing great work. There's great hope. There's great hope in that.
Yeah.
The other thing I focused on is the partnerships of those groups and organizations that help with the police departments. There are progressive police departments now that are saying, we get it. The idea of handcuffing a victim, a trafficking victim, and treating her like a criminal isn't working. What does that get you? They turn around, they get bailed out. You know who they get bailed out by? Their pimp, who again is the hero. And so all you're doing is driving them closer to the pimp, the only one who cares about me. He bailed me out of jail tonight. The other way to handle it that's very successful, and it's being done throughout the United States, including Las Vegas and Phoenix, is to go, look, I'm not arresting you tonight. I have with me a social worker who I partner with. What do you need to get out from under this situation right now? Or right now? Yeah. I need to get away from my pimp. We have an apartment for you, or we have a shelter.
Yeah.
Well, I need diapers for my baby. We can do that. We have it. Bring your baby with you. We have the diapers. I really want to be a hairstylist or a paralegal, and I need a certificate. We have people in the community who will get you that training for free.
Wow.
That works. And then once that trust has been developed, guess what? They now start giving up their pimp and giving the intelligence about the organization. He's got 12 women in his stable. He takes us to the Super Bowl, wherever that happens every year, to traffic us at the Super Bowl. He takes us to the Republican convention every 4 years. You start gathering that intel when you build the trust.
So I suppose a part of your work with this unit, or your research into the unit, also still kind of comes back into that intelligence. It's all linked.
Look, intelligence is a fancy word for actionable information.
Yeah.
And that's what every cop is looking for, right? I don't care if it's an FBI agent. I don't care if it's a CIA officer overseas. It's all about gathering the information that you can use. And that's what cops want. And when you show detectives, vice detectives particularly, who work sex crimes and prostitution, if you go, look, I could get you every pimp in town. You could roll up organizations that traffic people here. Oh, how can you do that? If you partner with this social services organization over here, they'll tell you who's being trafficked, and they'll work with you to develop trust with those ladies, and you will take down those pimps. And when they see the light, it does work. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Well, Frank Figliuzzi, thank you very much.
Yes, my pleasure.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.